I have a little bit of a cold, and I usually lose my voice, but last Sunday I present this to you just as a learning that I noticed that my voice went. Every time this vent popped on, within seconds my voice was lost. So I asked and found out that that vent could be turned off for the service. So that is one thing to be grateful for. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Thanksgiving is next Thursday. As I pondered last month what to speak about on the Sunday before Thanksgiving, it occurred to me that gratitude in general was not something that I had a lot to talk about today. But it is the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and we should be grateful for something. Earliest this year, I thought about planning a music Sunday near St. Cecilia's Day, which was on Friday. So there it was. On this Thanksgiving, we can be grateful for the gift of music. Because we are a Unitarian Universalist church, we can be grateful for the gift of music from those in our tradition who gave words to interfaith efforts, the calling of faith, hope in the face of despair, and joy in what endures. Today we will be singing 4 hymns during this message. One was written to translate the Jewish call to prayer. One was a devoutly Christian view of enduring faith, even in the face of possible death. One calls us to find hope in the most difficult hours and believe that God is with us. Another reminds us that life goes on, and so does joy. These hymns are Jewish, Christian, and humanist, and reflect some of our theological diversity. They have a story to tell. They are ours. Yes, even the one that is Jewish is partly ours. They belong to our religious tradition, though you may not have ever known them as such before today. The first hymn is Praise to the Living God. It might surprise you that this hymn is ours in any way. It's an English translation of the Yigdal, a Hebrew prayer sung at the beginning of morning worship and at the end of evening worship in Jewish community. Max Landsberg was one of the most prominent American rabbis of the turn of the 20th century. He asked his friend, Newton Mann, a Unitarian minister, to help set this piece. Later, he took the same piece and he asked another friend to work on the work that Newton Mann had done. His friend was named William Channing Gannett, also a Unitarian minister, to revise the work. After the work with Gannett was finished, Rabbi Landsberg submitted the hymn for publication in a Jewish hymnal in 1911. It is often found in Christian hymnals these days. Praise to the Living God was written to be used in interfaith contexts. There were, at the time that Landsberg worked on this hymn, there were hymns that were based upon the Yigdal, which were found in Christian hymnals that were very Christian-centered. And Rabbi Landsberg wanted a hymn that could be sung by Christians and Jews. It also stands as a testament to interfaith cooperation that has long been affirmed within our congregations and our movement at large. Please join me in standing as you're able and willing, and let's sing Praise to the Living God, number 215.
Say
You may be seated. Sarah Flower Adams wrote "Near My God to Thee." She was a lifelong, devout Unitarian, and she was a British Unitarian. They were more conservative than the American Unitarians were theologically. She, besides writing the hymn, she also wrote for literary magazines. Her work often advocated equal treatment for women and for the working class. Though she was often physically ill and became deaf, she advocated for social justice as much as she could. Sarah Adams also wrote anti-corn law articles. The corn laws were tariffs on imported grain like wheat, barley, and oats. Corn in this case referred to grains. The corn laws were intended to keep the price of grain high to protect the interests of the landed aristocracy in the British Isles. The British Isles could not produce enough grain for the people to eat, so most grain was imported and therefore taxed. The high prices on grain due to the tariff meant that poor people could hardly afford to eat, and that many poor people lived close to starvation. That situation, along with industrial pollution, overwork, and urban crowding, created a perfect scenario for the spread of disease. As some have advocated for protective tariffs in our times, it is best to consider the consequences of those actions. I mentioned that only because it was topical. Sarah Adams wrote "Nearer to God, My God to Thee" as part of a series of poems solicited from her by her Unitarian minister. He was putting together a bunch of poems that would be set to music, and he wanted her to create something for him. She submitted 13 poems. This and another poem were the only ones that made it out of that church into a larger movement. Though it seems very evangelical in its emotional appeal, the hymn is disliked by many conservative Christian clergy. Some oppose it because it was written by a Unitarian. Reportedly, the English setting of "Near My God to Thee" was the last thing heard by survivors of the Titanic before the ship finally sunk. Some of those about to die felt they were about to be with God. The version in our hymnal, number 87, is the American one, though. Let us stand and sing the opening and closing verses as we are able and willing.
Sun, moon,
For some of us, when we became Unitarian Universalist, we learned that our lives had already been touched by people in our faith tradition. We read somewhere earlier in our lives that something that might have influenced our thinking. This is especially true of American literature from the 19th century. If you were inspired by Herman Melville's Moby Dick, as my Unitarian Universalist minister was in Chattanooga, then you were reading a novel by a Unitarian. If you appreciated the feminist thoughts and attitudes of the novel Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, then you were touched by a Unitarian. If the fanatical Puritan Christianity in the Scarlet Letter and the House of Seven Gables troubled you, then you were provoked by Unitarian Nathaniel Hawthorne. Thoreau and Emerson might have stirred your thoughts. They both attended Unitarian churches, sometimes the same one together. And that happened to me as well. After I became a Unitarian Universalist, I learned that Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was a Unitarian. In 7th grade English class, each student was tasked with memorizing a poem. I chose Longfellow's poem, The Children's Hour. The poem is about 3 little girls trying to sneak up on their father in his study to surprise him. And they did so from 3 separate doors they were going to ambush him and run in and charge him. And it was his response to their surprise. In retrospect, I think that I chose that poem, when I was 12 years old because it demonstrated happy family life. And my family life was certainly unhappy. My parents' marriage had always been rocky, and that 7th grade year, it went totally from being mostly unhappy to always unhappy. They yelled at each other so loudly that all of our neighbors, even with the windows and doors closed, knew how unhappy our small family was. When they divorced 4 months after I recited the Children's Hour, the separation came as a relief. However, Longfellow told me what happiness in a family could look like. Unlike some creative persons, Pablo Picasso and Robert Frost come to mind, Longfellow was a good father and a loving, devoted husband. He was a renowned American poet, and his life was comfortable and secure. Even in the wealthiest and happiest families, such things do not always last. In 1861, an accident happened in Longfellow's home, and his wife's dress caught fire. He desperately tried to put the fire out to rescue her, but she was badly burned and she died the next day. Longfellow grieved her death and is powerless to put out the fire for the rest of his life. He grew long white whiskers on his face to cover the burn scars from the event. That same year, the American Civil War began. Longfellow supported the Union, but despaired that Americans were killing each other. He forbade his son Charles from enlisting in the Union Army to fight the South. I suspect that Longfellow just could not accept the possibility of the death of another person he loved so dearly. One day in 1863, my birthday is 1963, Longfellow walked into his study and found a letter there from his son Charles. Charles wrote that he had left home to enlist in the army to fight in the Civil War against Longfellow's demands. Then later that year, Charles returned home with injuries from battle that took a long time to heal. Charles did eventually recover from his wounds, but Longfellow feared that he would be an invalid or die during his recovery. In response to his fear and grief, Longfellow penned a poem entitled Christmas Bells. In the verses we do not sing, he specifically mentions the Civil War. Longfellow probably felt that others were going through the despair that he felt. He drew strength, though, with the hope that peace and goodwill would prevail and that the thought that God lives. He does not let the sadness that he felt take over. Later, the poem was set to music as I heard the bells on Christmas Day. Let us stand as we are willing and able and sing number 240 in our hymnal. The last story and song is Rick Maston's work, Let It Be a Dance. Rick Maston was a Unitarian Universalist minister who served longest the Unitarian Universalist Church of Monterey and Carmel in California. What a pity to have to serve in such a desolate place. That is one of the most beautiful parts of the United States. Rick Maston was something of a clergy troubadour in the 1960s and 70s, bringing his guitar and music to an estimated half of the Unitarian Universalist congregations in the United States. Maston wrote, "Let It Be a Dance in the Face of Tragedy," and in response to it, my colleague in ministry, Stephen Eddington, wrote a book about Rick Maston and quoted the origin of the song in our hymnal. Rick Maston said, and this is Rick Maston's words, "It was one of those horrendous tragedies. It took place one December at Carmel High School. A first-year teacher offered a course on modern dance and had 14 young men and women performing like professionals. My two oldest daughters took the course and were a regular part of the troupe. During Christmas vacation, the teacher saw that a famous ensemble out of New York City was performing in San Jose, about 80 miles from Carmel. She called up all of her students and said that if they were willing to be crowded during the journey, they could go up to San Jose in her VW bus. Both of my daughters wanted to go, but they had other holiday engagements scheduled. As the carload of dancers was rounding a corner on the way home from the event, a drunk driver who had pulled over to the side of the road decided to pull back onto the highway without looking behind him. The VW bus crashed headlong into the car, killing the front two passengers, one of whom was the teacher, and a backseat passenger. All the other young people in the back seats were seriously injured. One of the injured was Barbara Brussel, my daughter Jerry's best friend at the time. Her kneecap was so badly damaged that the doctor doubted that she would ever be able to walk again without a cane, let alone ever dance again. Remember, these are children who love dance. My family and I visited Barbara in the hospital, where I made a bet with her. I wagered that she would come dancing up our Big Sur Road exactly 1 year from that date. And I would write the music that she would be dancing to. The following week, while working in my garden, the entire song arrived. I ran to the house and wrote the lyrics down as fast as I could type. Better still, the words came along with a melody. Barbara Brussel did come up dancing up our country road exactly a year to the day after the accident, with me singing and dancing, Let It Be a Dance. She was limping, it's true, but dancing. Let It Be a Dance was composed to give witness to faith, acknowledging the struggle and hope in life. Now, acknowledging that there was life was filled with difficult times and eventually would be leading to death. But in the meanwhile, we could sing and dance. It acknowledges the struggle and hope in life. These were common themes in the hymns we've sung so far. Nearer, my God, to thee, and I heard the bells on Christmas Day. They evoke a certain pathos, it's true, but they were also resolute in living one's faith, even in difficult times. Whether or not you and I share the exact beliefs of our predecessors in this movement, we may take comfort from the thought the words they wrote and the music that we still sing can remind us that hope is to be found in many ways. In difficult times as these, I call upon you to carry a song within yourself, hum a tune that carries you through. If you're afraid, find a song that grants you courage. Music lifts our spirits. Remember to hold music in your thoughts. Even if you sing alone, you still connect. That's what we heard in our responsive reading. And as that late, great theologian, Robin Williams, said, this is not the typical Robin Williams thing to say. You know what music is? God's little reminder that there's something else besides us in this universe. Harmonic connection between all living beings, everywhere, even the stars. You weren't expecting that from Robin Williams, were you? But he had some important things to say. Let us acknowledge our harmonic connection with all life and the universe in this last song. Now let's stand as we are willing and able to sing number 311, Let It Be a Dance.
Let it be a dance.
Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. The Unitarian Universalist Church of the Lehigh Valley is a caring community. So in this time in the service, we give the opportunity for people to share the joys and sorrows that are in their hearts and minds. And you can do so by, if you're online, you can do so by leaving a message in the chat or asking to speak to those present. Or you can leave a message in the book over here. And you can come, if you're present in the room, you can come forward and light a candle. And you can light a candle. And if you wish to, you can be silent. Just light a candle silently and not share anything, but just let people know that something is in your mind. Now I invite you to share any joys that are in your hearts that you would like to be present with in this community.
Hi, I'm Sue Weber. I'm on several committees. This is not really a message from any of the committees, but I'm very excited. We are going to have Christmas Eve service. And so I'm going to find out some information today so we can put something out in the e-news, be on the lookout for that. And also be looking for some people to help organize food and decoration and things. Georgine and Jody have already offered. So if you're interested, you can let me know. And again, I'll put that in the e-news. So, but it's going to be very exciting. So thanks.
Hi, I'm Molly Trimble, and I'm grateful. That's my joy. I'm grateful that I come to a church that I feel comfortable in disagreeing with what is said. Not only that, I can speak it out loud. I don't agree with everything here, and I don't think you do either. But for the new people, you're allowed to talk about that. I am grateful, though, for many things. I have cancer, and you might think, why is she grateful for cancer? I'm grateful that they found it. I'm grateful that this Wednesday I start treatment. I'm grateful it's a type of treatment that I have chosen myself. I'm grateful that people offer to drive me. I'm grateful that when I walk in the door, people come up to me and ask how I'm doing. Sometimes I think it's hard to find gratitude, but I think if you want to find it, and you look knowing that you want to find it, you're going to find it. And I invite everyone to do that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Stagel. I have two joys. One, last night our contra dance was, the band was Soup for the Souls, which is a conglomeration of local and semi-distant musicians. And two people, special people were there, Justin Solonika and Jansen Wendell. So sending greetings from them, and it was so great to see them, and the music was wonderful. You guys gotta come to contra dancing. And my second joy is that you chose Let It Be a Dance, one of my favorite songs. And I don't know how many of you were around when Rick Manson came to Lehigh and did a concert and speech, but One of the things that he pointed out in that is the last line that says, "Bear the pain," B-E-A-R. It was supposed to be B-A-R-E. So it changes the whole meaning of that last line. So anyway, but I thank you for having that song.
We got a crowd. That's all I wanted to share.
Another quick one. I'm so pleased that we have the people in this church serving as volunteers, and one of those big volunteers is Elaine, who is her birthday today.
Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Elaine. Happy birthday to you.
Hello, I'm Dan. It's my first time here, first time in a Unitarian church. Okay. And I just wanted to say that it's really nice to be here, you know, with times as they are and with all the kind of fear and hatred and distress there is between being around other people and being unsure if it's a safe environment. It's very nice to be in one that I know is. So I can just relax. I can let that part of my worry, that part of that anxiety overhang, I can just let it go and I can just be present. And that's very nice. So I'm very thankful for that. So, thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Marisol, and I'm a joy because I'm a granddaughter. I have a grandson born Thursday. Thank you.
My name is Lorraine Bojnowski, and I am very grateful for the rain we received yesterday. Yes, 1 3/4 at my house.
Yes.
Maybe we're not as low on candles. I'll use one of these. My name is Amy Nyberg, and I just thought I would light a candle on a day like today to express gratitude for the masterful music that Larry Lipkis brings to us. We get to enjoy a lot of it as beacons, but just when he played Happy Birthday so masterfully, I thought that needs to be spoken aloud. So thank you, Larry.
As Let It Be a Dance reminds us, there is laughter and we also bear pain as well. And at this time in our service, we share the sorrows that are on our hearts and minds.
Looks like it's a good week.
This sorrow is for all the people who are being nominated to lead us, who have absolutely no experience in doing what they're being pointed to. And that is a bit of a concern and a sorrow. This last candle is for all the joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts but were left unspoken. Today we've heard words of gratitude, and we know that even though words of sorrow were not spoken, they still are present in people's thoughts. I now invite you to enter that space of silent prayer or meditation as we think about these things. So be it, blessed be, amen. One more song to sing. Our closing hymn for today is number 6 in your hymnal, Just As Long As I Have Breath, and it'll also be up on the screen. You're invited to stand as you're willing and able.